service had won the war before the Mongolian hordes crossed the horizon. That's the truth. And that brings us to what China is doing. China is not our ally. What's amazing about it is China doesn't really pretend to be our ally. They don't. China has published papers. We're not talking about secret communications we had to hack into and find here. China has published papers about their intention to take over as the #1 power in the world. They've even given us dates practically. 50 years from now, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. China intends to win. And because they intend to win, they've already infiltrated this country in horrible ways. Why do you think America's politicians, Democrat and Republican, oftentimes say things like, they're not even competing with them?
Fact is that I have met with Xi Jinping more than any other world leader has. I've had over 68 hours of private meetings, he and I with simultaneous interpreters. I spent a lot of time with Xi Jinping when I was vice president, and subsequent to that. And he once asked me at the Tibetan Plateau, could I define America for him? And I mean it sincerely, not a joke. I said, yes, one word, possibilities. I've allegedly met more face-to-face with Xi Jinping than any world leader has. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping. I've spent a lot of time with Xi Jinping, someone whom I have a great deal of difference with. And I was, when I was vice president, my president told me that he wanted me to get to know Xi Jinping because it was clear he was going to be the head of Russia, of China.
That's interesting, isn't it? We love China. Spend so much time with China. But it's not just Joe Biden. I don't want you to think it's just a Joe Biden thing. I remember I had a Chinese expert tell me one time, he said, you know what America's politicians, do you know what their reputation is in China? I said, what is it? And he said, their reputation is they're cheap. Meaning, China has already blackmailed and bribed our politicians. It's not just Joe Biden. Gavin Newsom, he loves meeting with Xi, too.
I want to applaud the Biden administration. And on the basis of the engagement I had today with members of the Xi administration, President Xi himself, I want to applaud his willingness to reconcile those differences, people-to-people exchange. The fact he's meeting with the governor of California at the subnational level, I think is indicative of a thawing.
What a great guy that Xi Jinping. How infiltrated are we? Well, I need to explain something to you. You know, the House of Representatives, they have different committees, right? There'll be the Ways and Means Committee, the Armed Services Committee, different committees. And they have an Intelligence Committee. You ever find yourself on Capitol Hill, you'll know when you get by the House Intelligence Committee room. Why? It's the one that looks like Fort Knox. Endless security, screening to even get into there. Why is that the case? Because they discuss highly sensitive, highly classified information about the United States of America, our intelligence, our military capabilities, what we know about our enemies. Eric Swalwell sits on the House Intelligence Committee, and he slept with a Chinese spy.
Uncontradicted that the president used taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election.
He also farted on television. Slept with a Chinese spy. He never got busted for it. She escaped, and he still sits on the House Intelligence Committee. And, you know, to wrap up my point here, because we have such a big show, we have so many guests I want to get to. Maybe the best way I can explain this is, you know what a spy balloon is? You know what a spy balloon does? A spy balloon, it's very obvious. Obviously, it's above, it's overhead. It can take better pictures than a satellite can, because satellites are way, way up there, right? China sent a spy balloon to the United States of America. We detected this spy balloon over Alaska, over the Pacific Ocean. We knew all this. They told Joe Biden, they told military leadership that China was spying on us. This spy balloon, we now know, was doing figure eights over our military bases, gathering up all kinds of critical information. Not only did we not shoot it down until it made the Atlantic, when asked about it, the president tried to say, I don't know, is that some kid's balloon? It must be private.
The intelligence community's current assessment is that these three objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research.
Obviously, he's lying. You know that. Why would he lie? Why would the president, why would our military leadership allow the communist Chinese to spy so brazenly on us? Because they're all compromised. I'm worried that Genghis Khan already has his infiltrators here, and I worry what may happen one day when the Chinese hordes show up over the horizon. Are our own people going to open the gates? Certainly looks like it. Let's talk more about China and other things with Colonel Newsham in just a moment. All of that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. We'll be back. Buying up gold.
We don't want that.
I really mean.
Joining me now, Colonel Grant Newsham, former Reserve Head of Intelligence for Marine Forces Pacific, author of the book When China Attacks. Semper Fi, Colonel. Colonel, is China, quote, eating our lunch, at least when it comes to manufacturing?
Well, they're doing a pretty good job. If you don't believe me, just drive up to Baltimore or Youngstown, Ohio, or any major American city. See what's happened over the last 30 years. Yes, there's still manufacturing in the United States, but it's nothing like it was. They just moved too much of it to China, and we have problems aplenty because of that. So they're still doing very well. Wall Street may be finally starting to wake up. America's business class, well, you notice they gave Xi Jinping 2 standing ovations in November in San Francisco. They've got a ways to go.
Colonel, can you explain what China's naval shipbuilding capability is versus ours? Because as most people know, our naval ability in World War II is really what won the daggone thing for us.
I've heard part of this. Actually, I've heard all of this interview with this individual right here. And what you're about to hear is absolutely frightening to the core. To think that various politicians for the past 30 years have not been protecting our own people. It's not just the guns. It's not just the fentanyl. It's not just the illegals. It's not just us being $36 trillion in debt. It's not just all the other domestic things that we got to deal with. But listen to what this individual has to say in the next 5 to 7 minutes or whatever, and take it upon yourself towards what you think in regards towards our safety and well-being. Now, before I do that, I'm going to say this. For the past 30 plus years, I have been tagged on to by Homeland Security ever since basically I made a telephone call 40 years ago. They have used up all their energy and time and effort towards wanting to destroy me. And the whole time, they've been lax in bringing destruction into their own lives, into our own lives, into my family's life, into my community's life. Now, if this doesn't make you boil, then obviously you do not love America. Please listen.
We'll look at World War II and think because we did so well then that we're in great shape now. Such is not the case. China's shipbuilding capability is about 220 times more than ours. 220 times. That says everything. The Chinese have turned out about 5 or 6 ships for every one that we have over the last decade or so. Their navy's much bigger than ours now, and it's getting bigger. Ours is getting smaller. So this is something that's been allowed to happen, and we find ourselves in a very serious situation. We just can't build enough ships fast enough. We're not even close. And what happens if ships get sunk or if they need repaired? We don't have the shipyard capacity to handle any sort of a serious war.
So we started the Reagan era because Reagan did build up our military and done a decent job at doing it, pertaining to the Star Wars and everything. But then here come Bush, and then here come all these other knotheads that now we can look back, if you're young enough, you can look back and say, my God, was the ball ever dropped on that one? And you know, that ball being dropped could very well cost us our freedom. That ball being dropped could very well cost not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of lives over here. That ball being dropped could very well affect my son and his family and the family below his family and et cetera, just because of our lacks or our inability to do the right thing. You know, there are certain areas that you just don't cut corners on. Because once your enemy finds out that you've been doing this, and of course, right now, this individual is basically advertising this. He's putting it out there to our enemies, pertaining to us being, I'm going to use the word crippled. Basically, like a lame duck. You don't think that puts ideals in various enemies' minds about America? You don't think that could also have an effect on our allies, of those that at one time used to stand strong with America because they thought that America was strong? And now, all of a sudden, they're finding out, well, America isn't that strong, is it? Not if China's putting out five ships to our one. And it just makes you wonder, pertaining to the compromising of us being so downstream, it makes you wonder, how could this have ever occurred? And I've said this many, many times, that we no longer have to worry about the wolf guarding the gate. Now the wolf is inside the chicken coop and he's killing the chickens. And this is proof of it right here, pertaining to our laxation of government international safety concerns. It is absolutely sickening to me, especially as much as I've had discussions with Homeland Security pertaining to Secret Service, and how that they have tried to entrap me, how that they have tried to set me up, how that they have tried to manipulate the public by them thinking that I was a nut, I was crazy because of my religious stance. I mean, I got even locals right here in my own county, or within 100 miles of this area, that would give their, you know what, for me to die. I told my son just the other day, I said, we're a country that eats its own. And to think that something like this would have went on back during the Civil War, or back during the Revolutionary War, it would have been the causes of treason that could have very well led into capital punishment pertaining to death. Anybody that spoke blatantly about their own country, much less take an American flag and burn it out here on a ball field, or burn it in front of a courthouse, and to think that our laws allow for that to happen over here? If that doesn't make your stomach churn, like I said, you don't have no love for this country. And if you don't have this love if you don't have love for this country in the sense of what we're supposed to be, as far as I'm concerned, you can pack up your bags and move on down the road somewhere else. It is absolutely frightening in thinking that our national defense forces, beginning with the Pentagon, and then from the Pentagon to the CIA, and then from the CIA to the White House, and then from the White House to all these other military installations all over the country, to think that we have allowed for ourselves to be this vulnerable, it goes beyond the pale.
And can you talk about that for a moment, Colonel? Because this is something people forget in peacetime, is if you go to war, they will get sunk, and they will need repairs. Half of our naval ability in World War II was being able to haul those bad boys back to California or Pearl Harbor and weld them up and get them back out there. Japan
Exactly.
could not do that. We won, they lost. That's important, is it not?
Well, that's the key to everything. We hear about how it's high-tech warfare these days and war is different. Well, no, it isn't. You get hit, you lose ships, you lose aircraft, you lose people by the thousands, and you've got to be able to absorb that. But we've adopted this just-in-time manufacturing for our military so that we thought we would have no enemies in the future. We just needed a few ships to come out, 1 or 2 a year. That would be plenty. And boy, did we get that wrong. And this isn't something that happened quickly. You could see it coming over the last 20, 30 years. But the thinking was, in both the civilian and the military, is that we will never face a serious enemy. And meanwhile, China, in plain view, built up their Navy and their Air Force and have reformed their militaries to the point it is a very serious threat.
Colonel, can you speak to the quality? We'll focus on the Navy for a moment, although you're obviously welcome to speak to their air power. What's the quality of these ships? It's one thing to churn out ships, but if they're a bunch of steamers, that's not going to get you very far. What are they making?
Well, unfortunately, they're making the most modern ships you can make. We often took a very condescending view of the Chinese, thinking, oh, they'll never be our equals. Well, here they are. Around 2009, the commander of PACOM, or U.S. Indo-PACOM, Admiral Keating, he was in China, and he was asked, what do you think about the Chinese having aircraft carriers? And he said, well, that sounds good to me, and I will be glad to help them as much as I can. The thinking was they would never, ever be America's equal in terms of a navy or any other form of military. And once again, they got that wrong. It turns out that China makes, as I said, first-class ships. Yes, they're not perfect, but they're certainly good enough, and in some cases they're better than ours. They seem to have less rust on them as well. And they've just got an awful lot of them, and they continue to build them out despite facing no enemies. So that ought to tell you something. But this is something we really ought to be afraid of. And do note that China generally introduces some new capability, probably 10, 20 years before all of the so-called experts predicted that they would. And they have done this over and over and over.
What's their new capability we're worried about now?
Just about everywhere. Outer space, hypersonic missiles. It's just more missiles than you could shake a stick at. They're getting their anti-submarine warfare capabilities improved. They've got a ways to go, and our submarine force really is our ace in the hole. We could use a lot more subs, but it does give us a huge advantage. The Chinese know it. They are aware of sort of our strengths and are trying to counter them. And they are also building up their own capabilities. As I said, anti-submarine warfare is one. The ability to do joint operations farther afield from China, how to work in their space and their cyber, their missiles, all of these forces together, so that the parts are more than just the basic sum. They're figuring that out. As I say, they know their problems and they're trying to address them. Fortunately, they haven't worked all of them out. But this is something that we are suffering now from having sort of belittled the Chinese for too long. They say this isn't to say that we couldn't give them a real bloody nose right now, but the trends are not in the right direction. And if they chose their times and the spot, they could give us a very bloody nose, particularly if it's a fight near the Chinese mainland. Another thing also to consider is their aircraft carrier capabilities, the ability to conduct naval air operations. This is something that they thought they would never figure this out, which is going to take them too long. Well, they figured it out, and they're doing carrier operations east of Taiwan, south of Japan, in the areas where we are operating. They're not at our level yet, but as with a lot of things, give them time. And the point is that now we had better wake up and figure out how we are going to take them on and make it so they know that we can sink the entire Chinese Navy in an afternoon.
Not only are they upping their scale on that, but they're also basically building cities on the oceans, floating cities, and that's going to give them more capacity to be able to do whatever that they want to do. It's just unbelievable in how that our Pentagon, people that's been in there for 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, retirees, have sat idly by, especially since 9/11 occurred. What was 9/11? Like 23 years ago? 22, 23 years ago? As far as I'm concerned, 9/11 never should have happened. And if they was going to pull the wool over our eyes like the way that they did, the second airplane that hit the second tower never should have hit that tower. That second airplane should have been blown completely out of the sky, even if I was in it. If I was flying somewhere that day and I was in that plane and that plane got taken over, I would expect the United States military, Air Force, to intervene and get it out of the sky, because it would be that much of a danger. But then again, we're a country that wasn't paying close enough attention towards what was going on in China whenever COVID first set out, and we had at least, I'm going to say, 2 months to figure out that they had a serious problem over there, because we could see movement in regards towards them building buildings that should have taken a year, that they was doing in weeks. And because our leadership was lax, it allowed for international flights to continue. And the next thing you know, what happened? The whole world got infected because of the infection that started in China. Now, I don't know for sure, and I don't think nobody else can validate this neither, of how the COVID virus got started, because it could have actually been an entrapment coming from North Korea. But then again, they could have released that in controlling their own people, because if you'll dialogue into what was going on in China just about the time whenever COVID broke out, you will see where there was uprisings happening to the degree of almost being on the level of civil war in an internal affair. In other words, their people was getting bold, and they was saying enough of this pertaining to communist-controlled dictatorship, and they was having riots on the streets. I mean, it was serious. It was totally serious, and that could have very well been the stem core that somebody said, you know what, let's just do this. This is the only way we're going to be able to control this matter, even at the expense of taking out our own. And it didn't take them long till, you know what, they was controlling their own, even at the expense of welding up doors and putting people in isolated areas that was confined for not days, but weeks, if not months. You never bite the hand that feeds you. And that's what they was doing. They was biting the dictatorship's hand over there, and because of it, basically all hell busted loose in that country. And you know what? Even to this day, that country is still suffering. They're still having massive floods. They're still having sicknesses. They're still having declined factories, and they're not building near as big and as bold as what they was, because at one time they was like putting out like 2 millionaires a day. I don't know if it's still on that level. I don't think it is. But the fact of the matter is, they have the technology, and they are probably not just willing to use it, but going to use it at some given time. And for our politicians to have sold us out the way that they have, especially with Big Pharma, in getting about 95% of all our medical supplies and medications from China that we didn't know nothing about until after COVID hit, because there was actually a ship that had ukus of medical supplies on it that was supposed to have docked over here in America for our America medical supplies. And you know what they done with that ship? They turned it around. They said, bring that stuff back over here. We're in need of it worse than they are. So that pretty well tells you how China is for China, not on a global scale, but on a independent scale that could care less about their neighbors far and wide. Same way with Russia. They have now realized that they have made a serious mistake with their people in being a little lax, and because they've been a little lax, now the people in Russia have stood up against that dictatorship, and they're trying to make up for lost time by going to war with the Ukrainians, towards using the Ukrainians as an example. That's what they're doing. In the meantime, it's probably a diversion, because they probably got bigger plans towards going over and taking over a whole lot of property that at one time used to belong to Russia. So it's just one instigating event, basically provoking into the free world global society that obviously even our own military squadrons over here have let us down. And it starts at the top. It starts with presidencies. It starts with the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, people like the Bidens. I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, that it has absolutely rattled me that we would be that naive to think that we will never be challenged.
We're not there yet.
Colonel, why haven't they taken Taiwan yet? We know they just had their election in Taiwan. It didn't go China's way. We think they're not going to let the Joe Biden presidency pass before they try something. Why haven't they done it yet?
Well, I don't know for sure. Xi Jinping hasn't told me, but I think they're ready. And I think what they're looking for is to particularly see what the United States might do. And they pay very close attention to the situation in the United States. And if they see us in chaos, fighting with each other, distracted, either domestically or, say, in Europe, the Middle East, well, the go signal sure looks like it's come on in that case. But if they see us as unwilling, unable to respond to an assault on Taiwan, then that is going to make it more likely that they do it. And
they will seize the opportunity at their own choice, at their own choosing, and don't think for a second that they're not scratching their head towards who's going to be the next king of the mountain. Anytime that you're like the, whatever you want to call it, champion. There's going to be challengers. But my God, I never would have thought that I would have had to have exerted so much energy and time and precious energy for the past 30 plus years in my own people attacking me towards trying to bring me down. And the whole time, the ministry has been a ministry that supported not just global peace, but domestic peace. Peace within ourselves, peace within our communities, peace within our families. All the teachings that Jesus Christ taught in the Bible is the things that I have been trying to promote for 30 plus years, and I have run into obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. So whenever I hear these stories about, oh yeah, it's the Arab Accords, and whenever I hear and see these stories about what went on in Afghanistan, it's like, well, you brought it upon yourself. You brought it upon yourself. The bad thing about bringing it onto yourself, I've got skin in this game. And it ain't just my skin. I got a son that's got a family. He had two families. He's got two families. He's got 3 children by one wife, and now he's got another little girl by another wife. I've got skin in this game. And if this country fails, my family fails with it. If this country fails, your families will fail with it. And if this is not an eye-opener, I'll kiss your tail and give you 30 minutes to draw up a crowd. Because the rest of our enemies is sniggering and laughing. And they're just waiting. They're like a bunch of vultures, waiting for the prey to kick over or become so weak that then they can basically jump on it at one time. And this is all part of the scheme, I think, with allowing for all these illegals to come over here to America. That's just been not only a weakness, but a distraction pertaining to global alliances. And if our leadership cannot wake up and understand this, beginning at the Pentagon, going from the Pentagon to the CIA, from Lincoln, Virginia, to the White House, then we need to exchange leaderships. We need to get some people in there that can see the same things that we're seeing right now as far as danger, Mr. Rogers. The little robot that used to tell I forgot the little boy's name and the doctor's name, danger. If you can't see the red lights flashing, then obviously you're either incapable or you just don't care. Well, I promise you, if you think that things is bad now, you wait until somebody like this takes over our regime, pertaining to making the good old American red, white, and blue flag fall to the ground and raise another regime under their power. You think things is bad now. You ain't seen bad. You ain't seen bad.
Going to make it more likely that they do it. And I think that we really need to be very careful as to what happens starting about now, actually. And I think the closer we get to this election, and if there's rioting in American streets like there was in 2020, I think China will be sorely tempted. Xi Jinping has been trying to sanctions-proof his economy so that if there are financial and economic sanctions put on China as a result of going after Taiwan, well, they can absorb it. And he also knows that a good bit of the world, particularly the so-called third world or developing countries, is actually going to say, well, this is just a domestic matter. So they're not going to do much, or they might even support China on this. And in America, one can easily imagine.
Right now, the third world banana Republican countries are suffering. They're suffering like they've never suffered before pertaining to COVID. We think that we're suffering over here, in which we are, especially in the housing industry, because now a lot of people is taking their businesses They're no longer renting out them buildings, and now they're taking that stuff home, and now they're doing their businesses online. But it's become so frightful over here that the foot traffic that used to keep the malls open is no longer there, and because of it, now the malls are shutting down. Amazon, UPS, FedEx, boy, they're getting fatter and richer every day. All these high-tech industries, right now is the time to jump on board if you want to start a business in the high-tech industry. And if you want to start selling stuff, start selling it online. That's where the market is. You don't think that these people know that? Sure they do. You don't think that the people in Korea know that? Sure they do. You don't think the people in Taiwan know that? Sure they do. You don't think the people over in Russia know that? Sure they do. So basically, since COVID has hit, what it's going to do, it's going to put more pressures on countries like Africa and other smaller countries that ain't going to be able to afford the same bushel basket of wheat that they used to could get for $2 a bushel. Now it's going to cost them $12 or $13 or $15 a bushel. It's going to squeeze the economies in all these little countries because the bigger countries can gobble it up. Because the bigger countries got bigger pockets. The thing about the environmental crisis that we're facing right now, it wasn't people in Cambodia, it wasn't people in Colombia, it wasn't people down in South America that caused this problem. Pretending to having too many automobiles and having too many gizmos and gadgets that produce artificial heat. It was the bigger countries. It was the superpowers that have brought this to the effect of what's happening right now, either below our feet or above our heads. And eventually, these smaller countries are going to catch on to that, and whenever they do, they could actually, motivate it into doing something against some of the other superpower bigger countries. I don't know, because what we're seeing is people struggling, and basically it goes back to the rule of thumb that the strong survive, or the strongest survive. That's basically what we're starting to play by. We're starting to play by the strongest survive. So this easy road that the American people has been on now, especially for the past 30 plus years, that party is, as far as I'm concerned, is over. Now, we've got so many younger kids out there, good, honest, decent kids that's growing up that wants to start their family, wants to start their future. But because everything is against them over here in America, they don't feel like that they got a future. And, everybody wanted to go in the direction towards college. Well, that's fine in one way, towards getting a bunch of brilliant people that can read and write and spell, know the arithmetic, which a lot of them today can't even spell or can't even add, pretending to hand them some money at the drive-through, and they have trouble in counting it out. Because why? Because they have been devoted on computers and other instruments that we have designed for them. And whenever it comes to creativity, like artists, singers, poets, writers, oh my God. You talk about taking a hit the same way as your welders or your plumbers or some of your architects or some of your other people that gets a little grease on them or gets a little dirt on them. Those people have elevated towards getting away from all that. Why? Because it was the so-called smart people that has put us where we are now. And they was so greedy and selfish that they wasn't concerned about nothing or nobody other than themselves. And now this thing is opening up, And now we're realizing from A to Z how vulnerable that we truly are. You know, that was one of Rome's biggest faults, is that they thought that they was high almighty and that they was invincible and could not never no one take them down. Same way with the Titanic. I used that just the other day for an illustration. The Titanic thought that their ship was unsinkable. And for one of their captains or whoever it was that made the statement that even God himself couldn't bring this ship down, was a slanderous remark to make, much less to make about God. Because I promise you, it doesn't matter how big that we become. It doesn't matter how strong that we become. It doesn't matter how powerful that we become. God can bring it down. God can bring it down. And once you lose focus of that, then you become a fool. You become a vulnerable fool just in the fact of thinking that we are invincible and that we will stay strong like our ancestors was during World War II. Those days is over, my friends. Those days is over. You got technology out there with these countries that can basically wipe our plates clean whenever it comes to getting on a computer and doing things. They can gun-ho through areas like you wouldn't believe. Now, we're catching up to them, and yes, we're learning our lessons as we go, but look at what it's costing. In addition to how vulnerable we are right now, with different areas in our lives, regardless whether it's medicine, medical supplies, or whatever, that we have basically been sold downstream. Now, what we do from this moment on will be the deciding point of whether or not we're going to bring that much more of a burden and a tragedy upon to our children and our children's children and their children. Because I promise you, after we're dead and gone, the world's still going to exist. The sun's going to come up. Sun's going to go down. The world's still going to spin. People still going to be living on the planet Earth after we're dead and gone. But how much suffering are we going to leave these people? Just like the indebtedness of being trillions of dollars in debt. They're going to have to inherit that because of our ignorance. There's no other way to interpret it. I don't care how many degrees you got on your wall. I don't care how much college that you went through. I don't care how smart of a professor that you may think you are. You have become educated fools in that sense. It's awful. And I guarantee you, our ancestors here in America that helped to found this great nation, they are rolling in their graves of thinking to themselves, my God, what kind of a bunch of idiots would have done this to themselves? Especially a country that was on top of their game after World War II, that remained on top of their game for probably about 50 years or a little longer, until we started taking it for granted. And usually that's what occurs. And I'm going to use people's health in exchange of this. And since I went through this operation that I'm going through right now towards having to get readapted to a wheelchair and crutches and stuff, you don't miss the water till the well runs dry. You take for granted that you're going to have good health indefinitely, and that basically you're invincible, and that you won't never die. I got news for you. We're all going to die. I got news for you. If you live long enough, we'll probably all be being carted around in a wheelchair or pushing around a wheelchair or something, because eventually your body wears out. These are facts. And for some strange reason, we as an Americans haven't been taught the facts by the very people that's supposed to be the smart people that's running the show. It's not the poor man that has put us where we are over here in America in all these problems. It was the educated man, the crooks, the greedy, the white collar crime. That's what's done it. But no one's willing to take them and arrest them. It's unbelievable in what occurred pertaining to COVID. It's unbelievable in what occurred pertaining to 9/11. And it's unbelievable in what occurred pertaining to the Oklahoma bombing that was a stem off from what went on of another unbelievable event down in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas. I could go on and on from 30 years back, from 1988, of how disruptive that things has become over here in America. And really and truly, there is a spirit here, a slavery type spirit that still to this day wants to enslave people and keep them stupid and keep them uneducated and keep them down. Where do you think that spirit comes from? That spirit comes from evil. That spirit comes from the people that's already on top that want to stay on top, but want to keep everybody else down on the bottom. That is not the same spirit that our forefathers and our ancestors had in developing this great nation. And if the American people can't wake up to that, like I said earlier, either you're incapable of seeing it or you just don't care to see it. Now, I'm doing my best by making these digitalized videos and catching people like this on interviews and talking about it in behind the camera while we're interviewing while we're recording this. I'm trying to do my best by putting the word out there about the mistakes and about the areas that we need to improve on, but still to this day, I'm not getting no support. This has been since 88. We're talking about 35 years of a man that has been on major Bible quest of getting his messages out to the people. But you're also talking about 35 years of a person that's been slandered, degraded, demoralized, and dehumanized, and demonized on account of it. These are facts. I got the proof to prove it. Either on paper or digital form or whatever. Either through the medical or the courts or whatever. I've got the proof to prove it. Just like coming back here in 2014, Northwest Tennessee, and basically all teetotal hell busting loose in not only my life, but our life pertaining to my younger brother. For 3 consecutive years, there was various people that was coming here, agitating and aggravating, and basically using torturous techniques. And of course, the thing about it is, whenever somebody's documenting this stuff, and now they're releasing it out to the public towards what actually happened, this group of people over here, this family over here gets to talking about this group of people over here, and they get to, well, was you doing that too? Well, we was doing it too. Well, was you doing that too? Well, we was doing it too. And once you realize the intensity of it towards my brother and I being hunted, people wanting to destroy us, you start to get the ideal towards a pile-on. And that's exactly what it was for 3 consecutive years, to the point that it costed my youngest living sibling brother, at the age of 51, his death, because he could not handle the pressures that the public was putting upon to our family. And the courts in this county allowed for that pressure coming from the general public to occur. After us begging for help, pleading for the courts. Please help, please help, please help. And you know what adds insult to misery? The very same people that was in power then, for the most part, are the very same people in power now. So you don't think that they've got bias opinions about various citizens in their own country? In their own county? Sure they do. Sure they do. They themselves are breaking the law. Because like I told Johnson, or I've said this publicly, that if I had broke into his house and killed his mother, which God forbid, and I hope that nothing like that ever occurs, especially from his perspective. But once I go to jail for that crime, and it don't matter if it's a year, 10 years, or 20 years, or whatever length of time it is, once I get out and I've served my time according to the laws of the land, I'm supposed to be able to have just as much right to start my life over as anybody else. And I know that's difficult for a prosecutor to think of, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter. Once that person has paid their dues to society, they're not supposed to be exonerated or that ain't the right word I'm looking for. They're not supposed to be basically disqualified from getting the same protection as they would have had before they committed that crime. They're supposed to get the same protection. You may have a rap sheet as long as somebody's leg, but as long as you have done your time, as long as you have paid your fines, and as long as you don't have no other hiccups with the public, you're supposed to be treated as an individual basically that has never broken not one law. Yes, they're going to keep up. They're going to keep score. They're going to keep score. That's their jobs, is to keep score. Okay? That's in the process towards if you commit another crime. But whenever it comes to opportunities and whenever it comes to safety issues, that courthouse up there is supposed to protect the people that has done horrible crimes in this county. They're supposed to protect those people just like they protect the bankers and the farmer, the $1 million farmers, and all the other well-to-do people in this county. But you set them down and see where how far that conversation goes towards being biased and prejudice. One day they will pay in the hereafter world pertaining to what they did not do that they should have done in the courthouses up here in Dresden, Tennessee. I don't have the money to prosecute them by law. I'm not stupid enough to have a vindictive against them to the degree of using vigilante tactics. Yeah, I can let them know that what they done, I don't like. I can let them know that what they done, they're not going to get away with it in the hereafter world. But that's about as far as I can go with it, because I don't have deep pockets and I don't have the corrupt, I guess, persona or for steam toward being able to fight against what that they have done. So that basically leaves me and people like me stuck in the middle, in between a hard place and a rock. And I just wonder how many people, not just in the county, not just in the state, but in the country, has been walked on or neglected the same way that our family has been neglected, that you know that what they have done is wrong. It's a violation to their own principles, because you're not supposed to prosecute somebody twice for the same crime. And that's basically what they're doing. They're prosecuting you twice because you made a boo-boo. Now we're going to hold your feet to the fire the rest of your life. And that was not the way the American laws was built or designed. But now you go up there and talk to Mr. Johnson about that, or some of these retirees pertaining to Tommy Thomas or Mike Wilson, or some of these other judges, or some of these other law enforcement agencies around here. You go up there and talk to them about that and see how their opinion is about it. Because I guarantee you they are so biased and they're so vindictive that they will not give people second and sometimes third and sometimes fourth and fifth chances. Now, once you realize that this person is not going to straighten their life out, let's say you got caught with a DUI, kind of like my brother. Guess what happened to my brother? His penalties got stiffer every time he got caught in behind a wheel, drinking and driving. And by rights, that's the way the court's supposed to perform themselves. That's the way the courts is supposed to perform themselves. That if you're a multi-offender and you get out here and get caught drinking and driving third, fourth, fifth time, the time that you go to jail is going to be more time. In other words, the first time that you done it, you get like 48 hours in jail. Second time you do it, you get like 4 to 6 months in jail. The third time you do it, you're going to get some real serious time. You're going to get like 2 to 5 years. And the fourth time you do it, you'll probably be looking at 10. And that's the way the system is created to do things like that. It's unbelievable, and what has happened to our American law enforcement structure pertaining to our political system here in America. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's gut-wrenching and heartbreaking at the same time.
Imagine a administration that doesn't want to have to deal with the potential of World War III. It's going to be able to think up all sorts of excuses not to respond to something China does. Wall Street is going to counsel, don't respond, the business class mostly as well. So China looks at all of this. And
the Hases want to keep what they have, regardless of how they got it. And they don't want the has-nots to get on the same playing field so that they can become an equal, because they see the has-nots as not only a liability, but they see them as a threat. And that's another thing that has drawn down this country that has put us where we are today. Greed, selfishness. What's the Bible say about the love of money? The love of money is the root of all evil. And it has literally turned this country upside down, along with drugs and along with corrupt courts and politicians. It has destroyed, literally, fundamentally destroyed the very fabric of our society, of the way that it originally was built with our ancestors.
And I don't think they have ever seen a better opportunity than now. And there's some debate over whether the People's Liberation Army is capable of conducting an all-out assault on Taiwan to seize the entire place. And as I say, there's debate, but I tend to think that they could easily think that they could do it based on the way their capability.
It'll be another David and Goliath. Get real. I don't know who this guy is, but it'll be another David and Goliath scenario. Unless somebody like us stands with that country in saying you're not going to do the smaller Davids this way. And that's basically been the only thing that has maintained democracy and order all over the planet. Well, as we get weaker financially, and as we get weaker towards being divided, and as we get weaker because of dumb politicians, now we become more and more vulnerable toward now. Not only are they going to pick on the little guys, but now they possibly may even pick on the big guys pertaining to us, because they see us as a threat. Where our politicians has failed is that they should have seen them as a threat. Don't never put your trust in another country. What they say to your face is one thing, and what they say in behind your back is completely different. I promise you. And whenever the rubber meets the road, just like COVID, they had a shipment, China had a shipment coming over here with medical supplies that they called them up and said, bring it back home. That speaks volumes about the leadership of that country and how they feel about the Americans. Even though we're their number one clients, or their number one sales whatever, yeah, that speaks volumes about them.
capabilities have developed.
Yeah. Colonel, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure, pleasure.
All right. There's so much more to get to. Hang on.
When you're the champion, you got to be the defender of your championship. If not, you'll lose your championship. You'll lose your position if you're not also a defender of that championship. And that's where America has failed, especially for the past 30 plus years, whenever they put this thing on cruise control or automatic pilot. And they thought that everything was going to be hunky-dory and everybody was going to get along and we was going to all hold hands and hang around the fire and sing Habalaba or Hoobaluba or whatever kind of songs that they sang towards everybody being equal. These major superpowers are not wanting to be equal. They are wanting to dominate. They are looking for superiority. They want to be the people that's calling the shots. They want to be in control of Google. They want to be in control of Facebook. They want to be in control of all these social media engines out there because they know that if they can control our minds and if they can control the entertainment of our minds, they can control us. And that's another area that the true Christians over here in America has failed, that they should have raised a red flag to way before I ever started raising red flags and hitting red buttons in regards towards artificial intelligence. Didn't hear a whole lot out of them till people like me started speaking up. Whenever people like me was bold enough to start speaking up about Google and YouTube and all this other stuff, that's whenever finally, a few years later, here come Congress towards bringing all these inventors into their council and explaining to them, because of your engine entity, it has caused this guy to commit suicide, this little boy to commit suicide, it's caused this little girl to do this, and you know, it hasn't been until just recently, within the past year, that these things are now starting to come out in seeing the dangers involved in artificial intelligence. I'm tired, and I know others are too, towards being a guinea pig. I realize whenever the medical industry says that they're practicing medicine, that they really don't have no other alternative other than to say, yeah, even though I'm a specialist, the things that we do to this patient may be contrary to the next patient because everybody's body is different and everybody responds differently to different medications and different types of scenarios. I realize that they're going to have to continue to keep using the scenario of we're still practicing medicine. In other words, we're basically live guinea pigs to the medical industry, even though they have advanced in leaps and bounds the way that they have in the past 100 years. Or actually, you can go back about 200 years. On that perspective, I understand it. But we shouldn't be live guinea pigs pertaining to our politics, especially whenever it comes to the safety issues concerning our families and our families below our families, pertaining to generations below us after we're dead and gone. These are areas that we should not have to be hustling our politicians towards, because that's the primary reason that we thought that they was getting into the political arena, was to better the will of the people. Come to find out, instead of them bettering the will of the people, they was primarily in there for the betterment of themselves. So can you not see how this has created an avalanche of treachery against their own citizens, of those that may have made a mistake, may have got tempted towards doing something that they shouldn't have never done, or maybe they got an anger issue, or maybe they was weak in the degree that they did get caught doing something that they wasn't supposed to be doing. But according to our laws, they're not supposed to hold that over our heads. And they have been doing just exactly that. They have been using bias, prejudice, techniques to the degree, just like the courthouse up here in Dresden, that was dead set that they was not going to do nothing for the Jackson family due to the fact that they had already made an assessment about the individual that's talking to you right now, that he was either crazy or a madman. Now, these are the people that had the ability to read the Bible and interpret it the same way as I did. And the whole time I've been preaching a message of peace, love, grace, mercy, joy, spiritual enlightenment. But did I get any of them to support me? Nope. Now, 30 some odd years later, do I still feel the rejection? Absolutely. And in the meantime, our ship is still sinking. She's going down. If we don't pull together in solving our own problems that obviously various people have brought these burdens upon to us, regardless whether it's politicians, bad preachers, lazy people, people on dope, whatever. These people have brought an environment into our lives today that is absolutely horrifying. I never would have thought growing up as a young lad in this area that I would have had to witness all this gun violence. But I have. Somebody walks in with an automatic assault rifle and just goes to waylaying on a bunch of innocent people. Don't matter if it's children, don't matter if it's elderly people, don't matter if it's people that's involved in praying, or don't matter if it's people involved in going to a theater, don't matter if it's people going to a college, don't matter if it's people being in Las Vegas, don't matter if it's people being in a bar. You don't think that this hard luck, this bad stuff that continues to keep happening to us over here, you don't think that there's a reason in behind it? That God has basically lifted his hand of protection and looked down at Lucifer and said, do your job, sick 'em. It's because we've walked away from God. And we're no longer true to the values of what God respectfully requires out of all of us. Not just one or two, not just one Billy Graham, not just one Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, but all of us. Regardless whether you're a preacher, teacher, politician, if you claim to be a Christian, if you claim to put a name tag on your platel by saying, I'm a born-again Christian, well, then there are certain requirements that goes with that. And if not, you're going to be labeled as a fence straddler. And according to the teachings of God, it says you're a lukewarmer. And if you're a lukewarmer, God said that he will spew thee out of thy mouth. And that's basically what's happening right now. God is spewing the lukewarmers out of his mouth, and he's no longer protecting these people. And now it's bringing anguish and distress in all of our lives because of it. Is the devil at work? Oh my God. He's working triple time right now. Because he knows his end is steadily coming about. And I thank God for it every day. I cannot praise my Lord and Savior enough of knowing that one day all the pain and suffering, all the tears, all the anguish, all the relentlessness, all the evil, all the wicked deceitfulness, all the backbiting, all the hoarding and mean-spirited people, one day all of that will be over with. And I cannot thank God enough by praying that it comes quickly. Now, at the same time, I don't want to be selfish, because I know that there's so many people out there that either have made mistakes, honest mistakes, and they're just now waking up to that fact, and they're going back to the altar. And there's other people that hasn't ever went to the altar. There's so many more souls out there that needs to know about Jesus. The real Jesus, the powerful Jesus, the healing Jesus, the liberating Jesus, the Jesus of the Holy Eternal Father. All this other stuff that people want to have a tendency of believing in, regardless whether it be one belief or another, which there's thousands of them all over the planet, there's none of them that promises eternal life other than the teachings of Jesus. Now, some of them will say that they do, but in reality, we know who's going to judge this world. We know that those that wind up on the wrong end of the great white throne judgment are
Let me
going
get into your timeshare. That's what they're doing to people. I'll call back next year.
Are going to have to give an account for everything, for every idle word, and for everything that they have done wrong, that they know that they shouldn't have done, and for everything that they didn't do, that they know that they should have done. We know one day these people will stand in front of the great white throne judgment in response towards accountability. And the main entity that basically gives me goosebumps every time I think about it is the Luciferian Lucifer, pertaining to the group, the evil group, and Lucifer, the Antichrist, and the false prophet themselves. I cannot wait to see this entity be thrown into a pit of hell where it will be tormented night and day, day and night, because of what that they have brought upon to not only themselves, but what that they have brought upon to mankind. Good luck to all of us as I try to end these messages every time in a decent tone of voice and in a decent spirit. Good luck to each and every one of us, because I promise you we are going to need it in regards towards the Holy Spirit being our not only comforter, but being our liberator, and being our protector, and being our inspirer. And I could go on and on and on with different words. That's what the Holy Spirit is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be our guide. It's supposed to be our teacher. It's supposed to be that comforter that brings us together, not separates us and tears us apart. God bless America, and God bless our troops, and God bless our endeavors towards where we go from this moment on, because I promise you, we are going to need it. We are going to need it. May God have mercy on all of us, and shalom. Heaven help us all.